Hello, this is part 6 of the video series Why You Should Not Use libGDX for 3D Games. This video is titled Excuses. My name is Ants, and I created this video series in order to help other people make good decisions before choosing libGDX for 3D. And so let's get started. So one of the biggest and most prominent excuses you hear whenever you basically say, we need to fix libGDX, or libGDX doesn't have this and all that stuff with regards to 3D. You get an excuse called, well, it's a framework, right? And this is coming from contributors, and mostly it's coming from the libGDX Discord administrators. And you definitely have to push back when you hear this, because it's not true, and this is the reason why. Remember the puzzle parts in a 3D game that I listed? Well, there's a lot of puzzle parts that are not existent in libGDX official distribution, right? So first of all, the physics engine, Bullet, the official one, it doesn't work on HTML. That's a missing piece. If you want to make HTML games, that's a missing piece. One thing that's completely not included is a 3D pathfinding and navigation solution, right? That's non-existent. GDX AI, it doesn't even come close. You just get a bunch of algorithms and there's no solution, right? There's no framework. And there's no 3D editor, but you might say, well, it's a framework, you don't need an editor, it's code first approach. Okay, that's fine. But how about 3D audio? There's no official 3D audio in libGDX. So there's definitely puzzle parts that are completely missing in this so-called libGDX framework, right? But let's move forward. And you remember all the laundry list of features lacking in libGDX for 3D? The laundry list is very large. It could be its own video, and it's probably going to be its own video. It's pages and pages of things that are completely lacking in libGDX for 3D, but you completely get for free in not only other engines, but other modern libraries and frameworks. So I'm not going to go through this list, but there's a long laundry list of things that are lacking in libGDX 3D. So when these administrators and these contributors and these other people on Discord who tell you that, well, libGDX is a framework for 3D, right? It's not. libGDX is an incomplete framework for 3D. Okay? So the other big excuse you always hear of why things take so long, and pull requests take 8 to 9 months of just sitting doing nothing, is they say, oh, we have no money, right? Compared to other game engines or libraries, right? So this is an excuse you hear quite a bit from the contributors. So let's take a look at the finances. Well, on the Patreon page of libGDX, so libGDX gets about $700 US a month, which turns out to be over 8,400, right? And unfortunately, unlike other open source game engines or game libraries, they're not transparent in how much money of that is actually used to keep the lights on and the hosting and all that kind of stuff. They're not transparent at all. But just keep in mind, it's over 8,400, right? So let's take a look at JMonkey Engine, which actually has a half-decent 3D implementation, full-featured, a lot of the things that libGDX does not have. But this is their completely transparent and open finances at the top of the money that they spend per year. They spend about $1,000 US per year. So that's less than $100 a month. and their current balance is 4.7 thousand, which is less than 1 year's worth of money that libGDX has. So libGDX actually in a year makes 85,000, and the current balance of JMonkey is only 4.7 thousand, and they spend 1,000 a year, which means that libGDX is taking in my, you don't know exactly where the money is going on libGDX because it's poorly run and there's no transparency at all. But in this case, it's fully transparent. And my point is this, is JMonkey is either at the same kind of ballpark or even less money from contributors, from donations, and they have a better 3D implementation, and it's a Java-based game engine library. You could debate which one for JMonkey it is, but yeah, so it's definitely not the money when it comes to 3D features and support, right? It's definitely not the money, because JMonkey is also a Java based game platform, and they have less money than libGDX, and they provide better 3D solutions. So it's definitely not the money. So this is a completely BS excuse, right? Yeah, and keep in mind that I'm going to go on with other examples of how open and transparent the actual donations are compared to libGDX, which is a problem. So let's move on to Godot. So Godot at this time is close to 60,000 euros per month. And if you translate that to US dollars, it's going to be more. It's going to probably approach 100K. But back in at the bottom of 4.2, so last year, when they were actually publishing how much money they spent on developers, they spent 40,000 US dollars per month for 10 developers, and those developers were a mixture of full-time and part-time. They didn't detail out who's full-time and who's part-time, and they even list the developer. They have all that transparency, but they only had 10 developers for 4.2. Now you could tell by the money that they're having now in 4.3, they probably have doubled that. But keep in mind, 4.2 only had 10 developers, and if you look at the bottom right, 4.2 had 1,800 commits and 360 contributors. Just shy of 360 contributors. And out of those contributors, only 10 were paid contributors. The rest were just people like me and you, and Tommy Edinger and Relius. They're just regular people like that, making the engine better. Okay, so 10 out of 360, so 350 people out of 10 people did not make any money making 4.2 Godot. Now I think they probably double. So they're in, right now they've removed the page where they were paying $40,000 for 10 developers, because they're actually getting ready to announce their 2024 financial statements, right? The Godot Foundation. So we're going to get the new number of how much they're going to get they're paying their developers and how many, but it's probably going to be twice as much. But even at twice as much, 4.3 had 520 contributors, and if they had 21 paid contributors, 500 of them are for free, right? So this whole notion that, we don't have money, well, there's very little of that money is actually going into actually making contributions and commits to GitHub, and the testing is also free. And because I help test too, everybody tested. There's a whole gigantic pool of testers. So it's not the money. The money helps a lot, don't get me wrong, but it's not just the money, because I think libGDX can compete. And here's my my argument, right? So Tommy Edinger, he's basically commits 250 commits in a month. So he is on a commit streak for over 10 years. He makes a lot of libraries for libGDX, and not only libGDX, just Java libraries. He makes liftoff. He does a lot of PR work too. So in 6 to 8 months that Godot actually generates a new release, like 4.2 to 4.3, it really depends, 6 to 8 months and stuff, because they go through a dev 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a beta 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a release candidate 1, 2, 3, and then they go into another release. The total cycle time, it varies, but it's months. It's many months. So if it's like 8 months, right? That's 2,000 commits that Tommy can do in 8 months, right? So that's comparable to 4.2's commit, which is 1,800. So my argument here is there's people within libGDX, and it's not just Tommy Ettinger. Relius does a lot of work. Screen Composer, the Game Jolt API, so you can do high scores. He's refreshed the Particle Park and all sorts of stuff. And there's a lot of people who actually do a lot of work. And so for them to say that, well, if you add up all these people doing work, it's actually a good chunk of contribution, right? It's just, is it directed, or is it just they just work on what they want to work on? Well, I'm not arguing that they shouldn't do that, but what I'm trying to say is there are people contributing a lot of time to libGDX. But there's a bigger problem, because I don't consider this a problem, right? This is good. But the bigger problem is the culture of reinventing the wheel and creating your own editor for your games and thinking that that's cool and that's awesome for libGDX, where people congratulate people who create editors for their own games. And it's, Tyler just basically was flaunting it in the screenshots, like he's proud that he does it. Now, great for him. He's doing awesome, right? Right? Well, how does that help libGDX? How many days, hours, months, weeks were kind of used up making all these different versions of editors, and a lot of them are just for their own games? How much time was made? It would be interesting to add up all the time. By the way, this is just I ran out of space on this screen to list all the people who either made a generic 3D editor, like Mundus on the left, right? Or they made their own 3D editor for their games, right? If you add up all this effort, it's relative to the amount of effort that's going on in Godot a few years ago. I think now it's just too late. You're not going to catch up to Godot, right? But how is libGDX getting better when we congratulate people to make their own editor and create their own game engine? How does that make libGDX and 3D better? Why are we congratulating these people? Anyways, this is just a culture within libGDX that basically it's going to be its downfall, especially for 3D, right? Because I think in 2D, the tool set and the framework is actually half decent. But for 3D, not a chance. And this is the reason why libGDX in the long run is, for 3D, is a sinking ship. It's just going to be fall behind, and more, where there's going to be no option to move to another game engine. And this culture has to stop. So that is and here's the other thing is Godot is only going to get better if the trend continues. I'm not talking about kind of like commercial, but if just for game engine and game jams, right? Godot is going to even eclipse Unity, right? It's going to be 50%, half of it. So again, things don't look good, and I consider libGDX a sinking ship for 3D. You can make a 3D game, but the return on your investment isn't going to be good. Thank you.